Rome's conquest of the Mediterranean is well documented, and even the affairs of its border regions have long been studied. However, the Romans who reached out far beyond the limits of their empire are rarely covered. Today, I wanted to bring to life one such expedition which may have ventured as far as the heart of Africa in search of the Nile's origin. You can learn much more about the intersection of history and travel through our sponsor, Wondrium. Wondrium offers subscription-based on-demand videos covering a huge range of subjects from history to science, travel, art, hobbies, and more. These come delivered in a variety of packages from your more academic courses to well-produced documentaries, exclusives, and more. Their platform has long been my go-to source for background research while making my own documentaries, and I've learned a ton. Their series The Guide to Essential Italy, hosted by Professor Kenneth Bartlett, is an excellent companion series to our video today. Its 36 episodes cover a wide range of Italy's rich historical sites, spanning from the monuments of Rome to the remains of Pompeii, the canals of Venice, and much more. My mind was blown by the ways in which centuries of Italian history weave their way through every facet of the landscape, each site begging to be explored by a discerning traveler. Right now, Wondrium is offering a free trial, which you can start by clicking the link in the description below or visiting wondrium.com/invicta. I highly recommend that you take a look at what they have to offer and dive into the material that you are most interested in. Enjoy! Human civilization had first emerged from Africa long ago, and for millennia, countless generations lived and died in the bosom of our first mother. Yet others would slowly slip free from her embrace as our species spread across the world. Such were the vast distances in space and time that these wanderers eventually forgot their home. The ancient Romans were one such people who looked upon Africa as a distant terra incognita. Certainly, they knew something of the trade and cultural exports which flowed across the Mediterranean to their shores, but contact was very limited during the early years of the Republic. In these days, the most evocative descriptions of what lay beyond came from the far-traveling Greeks. In particular, the work of Herodotus gives us an idea of what was being reported. To him and those of his time, North Africa was broadly described as belonging to the vast lands of Libya. The inhabited coastal regions were fairly well known, but once one moved away from the shores of the Mediterranean, the tales became increasingly exotic. Herodotus reports that, quote, "As the Libyans say, here could be found huge snakes, lions, elephants, horned asses, wild men and women, men that squeak like bats, men that have no name and see no dreams, men with the heads of dogs, men without heads who have their eyes in their breasts," and so on. Penetrating these lands of mystery would be quite difficult, as they were thought to be barren and inhospitable. Therefore, the depths of Libya might only be explored by traveling around its shores, as the Phoenicians were said to have done, or by following the Nile through the interior. In his explorations, Herodotus decided to pursue the latter of these options. He is reported to have spent much time in Egypt, collecting information, and claims to have traveled as far as the city of Elephantine, which lay at the border of Lower Nubia. Beyond this, Herodotus writes, quote, "The land now begins to be inhabited by Ethiopians. Half the people of the island are Ethiopians and half Egyptians. Near the island is a great lake, on whose shores live nomadic Ethiopians. After crossing this, you come to the stream of the Nile, which empties into this lake. Then you embark and journey along the riverbank for 40 days, for there are sharp projecting rocks in the Nile, and many reefs, through which no boat can pass. Having traversed this part in 40 days, as I have said, you take boat again, and so travel for 12 days until you come to a great city called Meroe, which is said to be the capital of all Ethiopia. The people of the place worship no other gods but Zeus and Dionysius, and they have a place of divination sacred to Zeus. They send out armies wherever and whenever this god, through his oracle, commands them." He goes on to describe that a journey further south, double the distance from Elephantine to Meroe, would bring one to the land of the Asmak, the deserters, who long ago revolted. Taking account of these vast distances, Herodotus then concludes, quote, "To a distance of 4 months' travel by land and water, then, there is knowledge of the Nile besides the part of it that is in Egypt. So many months, as reckoning shows, are found to be spent by going on from Elephantine to the country of the deserters. The river flows from the west in the sun's setting. Beyond this, no one has clear information to declare, for all that country is desolate because of the heat." This was the end of the known world. And yet the Nile had to come from somewhere. the question as to its source seems to have bedeviled Herodotus. Part of his digging unearthed the story which indicated that the Nile at one point seems to have cut west beyond the deserts. The tale he reports goes as follows. Quote, "When these Nasamonians were asked on their arrival if they brought any news concerning the Libyan desert, they told Antiochus that some sons of their leading men, proud and violent youths, when they came to manhood besides the planning other wild adventures, had chosen by lot 5 of their company to visit the deserts of Libya and see whether they could see any further than those who had seen the farthest. When the young men left their companions, being well supplied with water and provisions, they journeyed first through the inhabited country, and after passing this they came to the region of wild beasts. After this, they traveled over the desert towards the west and crossed a wide sandy region, until, many days, they saw trees growing in the plain. When they came to these, and were picking the fruit of the trees, they were met by little men of less than common stature, who took them and led them away. The Nasamonians did not know these men's language, nor did the escort know the language of the Nasamonians. The men led them across great marshes, after crossing which they came to a city where all the people were of stature like those of the guides, and black. A great river ran past this city, from the west towards the rising sun. Crocodiles could be seen in it. He said that the Nasamonians returned, as the men of Cyrene told me, and that the peoples to whose country they came were all wizards. As to the river that ran past the city, Antiochus guessed it to be the Nile, and reason proves as much, for the Nile flows from Libya." Beyond this tantalizing story, Herodotus writes with exasperation, quote, "But no one can speak of the source of the Nile, for Libya, through which it runs, is uninhabited and desert. Regarding its course, I have related everything that I could learn by inquiry." Later individuals such as Strabo the geographer attempted to better relay what lay beyond the southern reaches of the world, but to little effect. The most information seems to have been gleaned from travelers who sailed past the edges of Africa and reported on such journeys in their widely circulated travelogues. We cover the famous journey of Hanno the Navigator, for instance, in another episode if you want to learn more about these adventures. Roman interest in Africa would rise following the Punic Wars and their decades of expansion across the Mediterranean in the late Republic. Many Italian merchants, after all, were active along the fringes of the empire, and it's possible some of them may have begun to penetrate the interiors of distant Libya. More direct experience, however, would come as Rome took over Egypt and began to prod its frontiers. Augustus, for instance, would order a dual invasion of Arabia and Ethiopia in the years of 26 and 24 BC, respectively. The latter of these saw Roman armies clash with the armies of Nubia. In these campaigns, they got as far as their city at Napata, but eventually resolved a peace treaty that saw them settle into the traditional border region around the First Cataract. Over the following decades, envoys, tributaries, and traders would be exchanged along the Upper Nile. Unfortunately, history preserves no records of any Roman trips. Surely, however, the allure of what lay beyond remained irresistible. Recalling the words of Herodotus, quote, "This country produces great quantities of gold, has an abundance of elephants and all woodland trees, and ebony, and its men are the tallest, and the most handsome, and the longest lived." Homer in the Odyssey even mentions that Zeus was feasting with the Ethiopians in their land of plenty. Such was the nature of this fantastical place that it would actually be the setting for a popular Roman adventure novel entitled the Ethiopica. Yet while many might dream of exploring such a place, few had the resources to actually do so. One of the few men who unquestionably did have the power would be the Roman Emperor himself. To this end, we are told that Nero, fed up with the mysteries, actually ordered an expedition to venture into the unknown and to discover the source of the Nile around 60 AD. This event is recorded from different perspectives by both Pliny the Elder and Seneca the Younger. Pliny speaks of it in the context of mapping out the distances in his book The Natural History, while Seneca raises the tale to discuss earthquakes and other forces in his work Natural Questions. Taken together, we can reconstitute the journey. The explorers would have begun at the mouth of the Nile, likely in the major port of Alexandria, and arranged to be taken by boat. Carried by southerly winds over flat waters, travel would have been easy in this first leg of the journey, and in the matter of a week or two, they could have arrived at the First Cataract. Here, they could stop in the city of Syene or the islands of Philae to resupply at their commercial centers. This would also be a place to gather information, secure a guide, and arrange for travel beyond the cataracts. From here on out, the journey would have been much more hard-going. Pliny records the following itinerary in his assessment of distances. Quote, From Syene to Hira-Sikaminos, they make to be 54 miles. From thence to Tama, 72. To the country of Evonmitai, the first region of Ethiopia, 120. To Akina, 54. To Pitara, 25. And to Tergetos, 106. They state also that the island of Gagaris lies at an equal distance from Syene and Meroe, and it is at this place that the bird called the parrot was first seen, while at another island called Articula, the animal known as the Sphingium was first discovered by them, and after passing Tergetos, the baboon. The distance from thence to Napata is 80 miles, that little town being the only one of all of them that now survives. From thence to the island of Meroe, the distance is 360 miles. They also state that the grass in the vicinity of Meroe becomes of a greener and fresher color, and that there is some slight appearance of forests, as also traces of the rhinoceros and elephant. The buildings in the city, they said, were but few in number, and they stated that a female whose name was Kandake ruled over the district, that name having passed from queen to queen for many years. They related also that there was a temple of Jupiter Ammon there, held in great veneration besides the smaller shrines erected in honor of him throughout all the country. In addition to these particulars, they were informed that in the days of the Ethiopian dominion, the island of Meroe enjoyed great renown, and that according to tradition, it was in the habit of maintaining 200,000 armed men and 4,000 artisans. The kings of Ethiopia are said even at present day to be 45 in number. From here, Seneca picks up the story. Quote, "They told how they made a long journey, when they were provided with assistance by the ruler of Ethiopia, were given recommendations to the neighboring kings, and penetrated further inland. Then they said, we reached interminable marshlands. The local people had not discovered where they ended, nor can anyone hope to do so. Weeds are so entangled with the water, and the water with the weeds. They are impassable either on foot or by boat. Only a small, one-man craft can manage on this muddy, overgrown swamp. There, he said, we saw 2 crags, from which a huge volume of river cascaded down." Ultimately, this was as far as the expedition would go. Despairing of passing this final barrier, they took the long journey home back to Rome to deliver their report to Nero. Frustratingly, we were left with too few clues to properly identify how far the ancient explorers actually got. Some believe that they managed to make it all the way to the juncture of the White and Blue Nile tributaries, following the western branch to arrive at the vast swamplands of modern Sudan known as the Sud. A few argue that the final cascade alluded to by the report corresponds to the Kabalega Falls in modern Uganda between Lake Kyoga and Lake Albert. If either of these hypotheses are true, then the Romans had made it all the way to equatorial Africa, roughly 4,000 kilometers or 2,500 miles from where they began. That's more than 10% of the Earth's total circumference as the crow flies, an incredible feat for its time that would not be replicated by Europeans for centuries to come. And yet, this was not the only foray by the empire to explore the realms beyond the Saharan barrier. Several other expeditions were launched by the Romans across Africa to discover what lay beyond. But those stories will have to wait for another time. For now, I hope you've enjoyed this retelling of the expedition to find the source of the Nile and the heart of Africa. A big thanks to the patrons for funding the channel, and to the researchers, writers, and artists for making this episode possible. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content, and check out these other related episodes. See you in the next one.